call to order this session of the Tacoma Park City Council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Stewart.
Here.
Councilmember Kovar. Here. Councilmember Dabala. Here. Councilmember Costick. Here. Councilmember Siemens.
Present.
Councilmember Smith. Here. Councilmember Searcy. Here.
All right, we just have some small additions to our agenda this evening. We will have the presentation of our Safe Grow photo contest right after I go through the agenda. We have the adoption of minutes from January 30th and February 6th. And then Councilwoman Costick asked for a little time at the end of our voting session. So she will speak to us about the Complete Safe Streets Committee after we vote on the consent agenda. No other changes to our agenda. This is our last meeting in the summer, and we will come back again on September 11th. So no more meetings here. Don't come here on a Wednesday night at 7:30. We won't be here until September 11th. So our first order of business is our Safe Grow contest winners. This is our third year doing the Safe Grow contest, and I just want to take a few moments to talk about it. So a number of years ago, the City of Tacoma Park passed our Safe Grow Act. It restricts the use of cosmetic pesticides for lawn care on public and private property. When this was passed in the city, and as it is now, it was controversial, but we did it, and then the county did it, and now a number of localities, not just in the United States but around the world, are waking up to the harmful impacts of pesticides, particularly on lawns. And I just want to say thank you to all the activists and volunteers who not only helped us here in Tacoma Park pass our Safe Grow law, but also worked at the county level and are working day in and day out to make sure these laws stay in place. You know, in addition to having the restrictions, we know, and again, thanks to the activists who work on this, that we need to also make people aware of and celebrate the fact that we can have amazing, beautiful, sustainable gardens without these awful pesticides. And so that was the impetus behind the Safe Grow photo contest. And this evening, you are witnessing the three finalists in the photo contest. We had 22 photos submitted this year. They were judged by our in-house photographer here on the city staff. The theme for this year's contest was Hidden Gems. So that was our theme. And do we have our, we're missing, we'll announce them. And unfortunately, hopefully she can hear this and we'll get her prize to her. So I'll start with the third place winner is Laura Delaney, and her photo is the one with the tea kettle sculpture. So Laura's in third place. Second place. This is the third place. This is the third place, yes. Second place is actually this photo by Eli Kopel. So he's second place. And then our first place is coming soon, the last one by Bill Crandall. So I know Bill and Eli are here. We'd like to give you the prize and ask you to come up and take a picture with the City Council. So.
Where are you going? Oh, you broke out to the last game.
Awesome. And I just want to thank our city staff, Donna Wright, for her work on organizing the event this year. Thank you very much, Donna. Thank you. All right, moving on to our agenda. We have adoption of our minutes from January 30th and February 6th. I know a couple of us sent the city clerk some minor edits on those. Would someone like to move adoption of the minutes? Councilwoman Costick moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Councilmember DeBala, second. Any other changes, comments on the minutes? All those in favor of adopting the minutes of January 30th and February 6th, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, now we will move on to public comments on voting items. And is Gina? Yeah, Gina. We are going to show a video, I think. Do we have a second? All right, as we're waiting for that, I will, do we have any comments on our first voting item, which is second reading ordinance approving the FY 2020 budget amendment number 1? No? All right, just hold on one second. Sorry, I went out of order. I wrote Gina's name down and then skipped it. All right. Any comments on our second reading ordinance approving FY 2020 stormwater management budget number 1? Okay, seeing none. Any comments on our second reading ordinance adopting a pay structure for staff that are members of ASME? All right, seeing none, then we will now have our single reading ordinance awarding a contract for architectural design services for the library. And now you may go.
I live on Tacoma Avenue in Ward 1. Myself and my family are big supporters of the library renovation project. But we thought it would be best for you to hear from some of the library's younger patrons, so we put together this video to show to you. The suspense is building. This video better be good, right? I'm a professional photographer and I do a lot of presentations. This always happens. Always. Sure, my name is Chip Somodevilla. Mm-hmm. Because I also have it on a jump drive, if that helps.
Okay. Let me see. What I did here. See this Can you see it there? Okay. I don't know why we're seeing that. That's interesting. So we can play it. They're going to see it, but not out here. You want
Okay.
to just play it anyway?
It's up to you, whatever. I thought it might be good for people in here to see it too.
See if we're getting audio.
A lot to begin with, but now I'm like checking out like 20, 30 books at a time to begin with, but
Try one more time.
Okay.
There we go. There we go.
Oh, there it is. All right. Victory.
I think there's about 10 seconds of black.
Yeah, there's 10 seconds of black. Okay. Now you're seeing the black screen. Oh, okay. It should come through now. Let me know if you don't see it on your monitors. It should be starting now. Yes. You're not seeing it on your monitors. Oh, okay. Are you sure? I appreciate you adapting. Improvising. Thank you. Okay. Thank you for improvising. I appreciate it.
What do you like the most about the library?
Well, the library, so I would say the books.
I think it has helped me read a lot more. Like, I read a lot to begin with, but now I'm like checking out like 20, 30 books at a time from the library.
And then this one, I'm not sure why I liked it. It's probably because, the title, Candy Makers. Whenever I enter, I feel quiet and more like relaxed in that I can just do and look for books. Whenever I read, I feel like I am in the book, like the main character.
I would describe the library by enjoyable, comfortable, safe. You can always find a friend or someone new that you can read with. There's a wide arrangement of books.
I think it's really nice because like all the 2 elementary schools and the middle school are like right here. So all the kids will come here after school, and that's nice because you can just see some friends after school. And then it's also nice because like Tacoma Park is such a nice community, and then there's a library right in the middle of it.
I also discovered that there's a book about whales, and it says that a whale's whale shark's throat is only this big. Like, I thought it was gonna be like this big to swallow people.
The first time I came here, I was looking for specific books. So then I kind of just read a bunch of the books that I was looking for. Then I had school and they asked me to get different books so I could read them. And then afterwards I was kind of just looking for books to read. So I feel like I've read about 3/4 of the books in this library. Bad Islands is about like these alien monster things. And like they're all fighting and stuff, and like this family gets stranded on an island, which turns out, well, I don't want to tell you because you should read it.
We go to school, our mom picks us up, and we go to the library.
A lot of kids at my school, they like to come here after school to the library because their parents can't pick them up, and I think that helps a lot of people.
It's easy to get to because it's close to our house. It's very near our house, so it's easy to walk to, and so we don't have to spend energy in the car or doing an electric scooter, which I chipped my tooth on.
Oh, sorry.
This week I'm doing a camp in the community center. So like if I ever wanted to go to the library after camp, I could just like walk over here and get some books. So
Also, if we didn't have this here, we wouldn't have these books. And when we read, we get smarter no matter what we read. It's fun to come here after school and read books that you haven't read, and I find books all the time that I've never even heard of and like it.
I sometimes just walk along the aisles, not really looking for anything. I find like an author that I like, and then I seem to like it, and I check it out. It might have like more windows so you could see outside, and let like more natural light in.
Also, I think they should have a little bit of a bigger library with a little bit more books, because like often like there's only one or two. There could be maybe like a little room where people could go on computers. In my school, they have a library and then a book nook section. Like, it's just like where people sit, and there's a bunch of like flexible seating, and you just sit there and read your book.
Like really comfortable chairs and stuff where you can like, after you pick out books, you can just go over there and like sit down and read.
I think the library should be bigger because I'm running out of books to read. I don't know. I don't know how I would survive without books.
Do you have a joke you want to tell me?
What did the nose say to the finger?
I don't know.
Stop picking on me.
Classic.
All right, thank you very much for that, for everyone who produced that and put it together and starred in it. Thank you. Any other public comments on the single reading ordinance awarding a contract for architectural design services for the library?
Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
Doris Duarte and Jackie Frazier stopped me in the hall out front. They were apologized that they were not going to be able to make the meeting tonight, but they asked me to let the council know that they strongly support the library, and think it relates very much to the work they do with the Lunch and Learn program.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Love it.
Ms. Sherwood?
Good evening. My name is Wayne Sherwood. I live on Grant Avenue, and I've lived there since 1991. And I have been a big supporter of the library all that time. I've used it a lot. It's only a 5-minute walk, and I come over several times a week. And the library staff have been wonderful for me. It's been one of the major reasons why I like living in this neighborhood. And I fully supported the idea of renovating and expanding the library, and sat in on a lot of the early sessions with the architect and walked through a whole bunch of proposals and options, and I thought they were very interesting and very appealing. And then I supported the increased funding levels up to the time when I was told that there was going to be, it was going to cost $7 million when the city wanted to go out for a bond issue. And with some reluctance, I supported that. I mean, it had gone up from $3 million to $5 million to $7 million. And then recently, this spring, we were told that it was, we might have to be torn down and tear down the whole thing and build a new library. And then recent cost estimates have been seemingly going up still further. People have said there's $7 million available from the bond issue, and 300 and something available from the state, and maybe another 3 million available from the cable fund. And so now it sounds like we're talking about 10 million or more. And I don't know if that's true, but listening to the discussion last week, it seemed like everything was still all over the place in terms of nobody knew quite what this was going to cost, and nobody could quite understand the floodplain studies that had been done and what they implied. And so I would just like to say I'm very, very happy that the council, as I understand it, looking at what's on the web, is going to take another look and take another few months to go ahead and then come back again early this fall. And I would certainly like to see this project go ahead. It's just that it seems to me so uncertain, so many uncertainties, that I think it's well worth taking another look. So thank you very much.
Okay, any other public comments on this item?
All right. Hi, Mayor and council members. My name is Francis Nugent, Belford Drive. I am the current president of the board of the Friends of the Tacoma Park Maryland Library. Earlier this week, I submitted a letter on the board's behalf about the importance that the library plays in our community, the need for having a new library, and the need to have the full support of the council moving forward for such an important piece of our community. Instead of kind of repeating the contents of the letter, I just wanted to share with you all kind of the importance that the library plays for me and kind of libraries in general and the work that I do. I've been a disability rights attorney for 7 years now and a disability advocate and ally my whole life. Some of my earliest memories involve going with my family, my sister, to our local library to meet other families, siblings, and people with disabilities. It was an amazing source of support, kindness, and empathy. And so to me, as a kid, going to the library wasn't so much about just going to get books. Obviously that's a great thing to do, but it also really represented a profound sense of a new community for me. As an attorney right now, some of the most important work that I do isn't in the courtroom. It actually takes place in the library. I do a lot of legal outreach sessions in Ward 7 and Ward 8 of DC, the lower incomes part of DC. I do presentations on things like disability discrimination, public benefits, access to vocational supports. And these were for a lot of people who otherwise wouldn't be able to go other places. They don't have transportation funds, they don't have other resources. So really being able to come to their community in a place that they can walk to, they're familiar with, and they feel safe is really important. Now as a Friends board member, I work closely with a very dedicated group of board members along with over 200 Tacoma Park members. We do a lot of fundraising to support a lot of the amazing programming I'm sure you all are aware of, things like Summer Quest, Winter Quest, Spanish and French Circle Time, establishing free little libraries around the city. We've also recently got a grant to expand upon our ESL book club for Piney Branch students. So, really, the library is such an invaluable space for so many people, but it's also a space that a lot of people just truly depend upon. It's a place really where they're accessing services, community, socialization that they really can't get anywhere else. And I know in our city, public space is so important, and this is really the most valuable public space I think that we have. So I want to, encourage you all to move forward. This is really something I feel is very important for the council to work collectively on, to show strong support together. And I also want to offer our support as the Friends. If we can provide any assistance, any discussions about programming that goes on there, we'd be really happy to be involved in that process. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, good evening. My name is Wendy Turman. I live on Jackson Avenue in Ward 2, and I'm recently minted member of the board of the Friends of the Library, which has been great because I'm paying attention to a lot of things that I was taking for granted. And one of the things that's jumped out at me, there's a lot of documentation about the need to fix and renovate the library. The cover letter to tonight's resolution, there were some words that jumped off the page at me, like rodents and mold and asbestos. Those kinds of words are scary when we're thinking about humans and books as well. There was a community needs assessment that I participated in a long time ago, and then I stopped paying attention. So I'm paying attention now. The thing that really strikes me is that there's not very many staff members who are putting on an astonishing number of programs reaching a huge number of people in the community, people of all ages, abilities, in several languages, and they're doing this in a building that has way outgrown their needs. I was interested in reading back in the architect's report from 2015 that the last major upgrades to the building took place in 1968. Other than that, it sounds like there's been an air handling unit, but not really anything since then. And our community, I am guessing, does not look the same as it did in 1968. So the library staff has done their job in adapting to the needs of a changing world and changing needs of a community, but the building is exactly the same. So to my mind, we've not been paying attention, and this is way long overdue. This is something that we really need need to get to. I live in a house on Jackson Avenue that served as the first home of the library in 1935, when the residents of Tacoma Park wanted this growing city to have one of these centers of learning that was available for everybody. It's a small house and it's not very convenient. It's the other side of Sligo Creek Park. They collected some books there. They held a couple programs in the side yard, and then they moved it closer to the center of the city, because this is not a place that is particularly accessible to the center of downtown. This current library was built just 20 years later and has really fulfilled that early vision and has become a place to foster literacy, lifelong learning, and community engagement. I was really struck by those kids and their words, and I have one of those kids who's now a college-age student who remembers going to the library as a student, because Tacoma Park Public School students get to go to the library, and the feeling of very, very deep welcome that was received then, that has fostered lifelong habits. So thank you very much for your time tonight. Thank you for moving forward.
Thank you. Any other public comments on this item?
Hi, my name is Kristen Ingebretson. I live on New Hampshire Avenue in Ward 4. I'm a homeowner in the Tacoma Overlook condominiums, courtesy of the home stretch from the city, so I also like to publicly say thank you. But one of the main reasons I bought a home in Tacoma Park is because of the wonderful amenities that I have. Being a part of the DC area and an urban feel with things like our local library and local police, but having that same small town touch that I grew up in the Midwest in a small town in Kansas. So having a librarian who knows my tastes and knows my daughter's face is really important to me, particularly as a single mom. I'm also here today with 3 guests that would like to raise their hand in the back. My daughter Sophia, her friend Ruby, and her friend Henry. I was part of 5 families in Tacoma Park at Piney Branch Elementary this year that after school we did our own cooperative aftercare program. And we swapped, each parent taking one day, taking the group of 5 kids, and it usually revolved around something in this center. So whether it's the rec center, the pool at Piney Branch, or the library, we heavily leaned on these resources to provide wonderful, low-cost activities for our students and our children. And on a personal note, I really love the library because, I don't know if I should say this publicly, but you guys get books faster than the other ones and nobody knows about it. So I'm able to read like the top New York Times bestseller books while everyone else in Montgomery County is on this really long wait list at Silver Spring. But even more importantly, my daughter loves the library. And we had a really difficult school year this year. The curriculum was not up to standard. Her teacher did not care. She was just floundering, just a bright girl who was bored to tears. And we came to this library so frequently, and she was checking out books by the stack, the way my grandmother had done, and the way my mother had done, and the way that I had done. And she was saying, well, if I'm not going to be learning at school, at least I can go to the library. And she was checking out books about the Civil War, about baking, and in the children's section, over in the adult section. So anything the city can do to keep, improve, build upon these resources that make Tacoma Park a place that I wanted to buy a home, that I want to volunteer my time at the local PTA, that I want to come to city council meetings, anything that you guys can do to keep those kinds of amenities for families, particularly like my family that, I'm a single mom. Ruby's father passed away this year, and the community really rallied to provide aftercare services for her while her mom was working, and she got her first library card with me through the help of a librarian, a Spanish translation form, and WhatsApp. And so I want to say, those are the kind of the personal touches that make Tacoma Park so great. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Ruby, for coming tonight.
I want to speak now because I have to walk home and there's supposed to be a thunderstorm any minute. Please follow the axiom, live simply so others can simply live. Please. I am fighting with all I have, the Bethesdization of this town. And someone called it a small town. It's not a small town anymore. You should have lived here 35 years ago when I moved here. It was a small town then. I just don't like it. why don't the wealthy people pay for the $10 million library? I believe it should be renovated and have working water and have a bathroom that people with disabilities can go into. I'm but everybody in this town thinks I'm a horrible person because I don't want $10 million for it. I really don't like that. I don't like this pressure. All you rich people putting pressure on me, and I don't like it. Thank you.
We'll get you, Mr. Lovelace, the microphone. Is there any other public comments on this voting item?
So my name is Gina Lambright, and I'm a board member on the Friends of the Library, and I helped produce the video. And I'm also a political scientist. I teach at American University, and in thinking about the library renovation, I did a little bit of reading on some of the research about the impact of libraries on communities, and we've already heard a lot tonight in the video from the kids, and also in previous meetings. So I just want to make maybe 2 additional points. And this is going to probably kind of repeat things that we all know already. And the first is libraries as providing critical access to information, which is a valuable service to facilitate political engagement and political participation. And our library already serves this important role. For example, nearly 30% of the respondents to the resident survey in 2018 reported that they had used the public computers at the library, and nearly 45% of the respondents from Ward 4 reported that they used the public computers at the library. Renovating the library will allow it to fulfill this vital democratic function more effectively, I believe, ensuring that Tacoma residents have continued access to the print and digital resources that they need to continue to be engaged and active citizens. The second point, I believe we are fortunate to live in a diverse community, and promoting inclusion and equity are important missions of the City Council. The library contributes to fulfilling these important goals. There's quite a bit of research that finds that libraries enhance individuals' trust in members of their community, particularly in members of the community that are different from them. And libraries do this by creating informal opportunities for people of diverse backgrounds and life experiences to interact with each other. But importantly, the provision of dedicated rooms, meeting rooms for the community to use, and also formal programs that are offered by the library have a similar bolstering effect on societal trust. Our library, as we know, provides a public space where diverse groups of citizens interact with one another. I believe that the renovation will increase such spaces, allowing for more informal interactions, but it could also enable more formal programming and create the dedicated meeting rooms. As a result, I would argue that the renovation can contribute to building a stronger, more inclusive and tolerant local community, reinforcing the values at the heart of Tacoma Park.
Thank you. Mr. Lovelace, go ahead.
Yes, my name is Pat Lovelace, your official peace delegate. And I'd like to tell you people that the library can be a vital resource in the care of our community, because we can have the kids go from the schools. If their parents aren't home or they're out on vacation, they can go over to the library and learn how to read. Because when I was a kid, I used to always go to the library. And if the kid has problems with one of his parents, like if he's afraid of his father, nothing wrong with going over to the library and meeting people. And also, it'll lessen your chance of getting attacked on the streets. You know, because with all these abductions going on in the world and all these shootings, what better place can you have a kid wait for you than in the library, learning how to read? Because there's nothing better than a book. Ever since I went blind, I've been totally craving for a book and craving to be able to read. A lot of people say that when they first learning how to read, they don't want to do it. Well, when I was learning how to read, I always had my nose in the book. You couldn't pull it out with a pair of dental pliers. And I'd like to tell everybody out there, remember, it's a public resource that has many more uses beyond the imagination if you only know how to apply them. So I want to tell you people out there, take good care of your children and get them to the library. Better than being on a street corner addicted to drugs. I'd rather see them addicted to books and reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lovelace. Any other public comments on this voting item?
Hi, I'm Julie Taddeo, Central Avenue, Ward 2. I can't really add much to this. First, I just want to say thank you for the photo contest. It's so exciting that 7 years ago we were on the right side of history. So I hope we can continue this tradition. The other thing is, so for me, when I moved to this town 13 years ago, I was a new mother. I didn't know a soul, and a one-car family. I hadn't started my job yet, and I really was lost. And it was the library that saved my life. I had a place to go with my baby. I had circle time with Miss Karen. And now that baby is 13, and I know she has a safe space to go as a middle schooler. At her previous school, there was no safe space to go. She was stuck in a neighborhood where I couldn't let her walk home. So now I know that she's safe. But also my husband goes there on the weekend, and he writes his physics papers there. I mean, so for us, it has a special place. But my sister is a librarian, and so I know how libraries have changed over the years, and it really does need to be updated. The Silver Spring Library, I know that we all think it's wonderful. I have never used it. It's not convenient for me. I don't always have a car, and I don't think it's convenient for a lot of families in this community. So that's not the solution, and I hope we don't use that as the solution. So I do hope to see this move forward. And to meet the needs of climate change, because I know the issue of flooding is going to affect it, and so the money will be well spent in making this a safe place, for the 21st century. So thank you.
All right. Love it.
Any other public comments?
I'm Chloe Kabadi, and I live on Boston Avenue. So I've been coming to the library since I was really little. With my mom and my brother, and I got my library card when I was 6, and that it just kind of opened a whole new world for me, and I could read more books than ever. I was getting like I said in the video, 20 and 30 at a time, and I learned so many things from coming to the library. And in this generation, there's a lot of kids have phones, and they're always on their cell phones. But with the library renovation, there'll be more books and more books for kids who are obsessed with their phones to read, because that will, I think, and I also think it'll help our community a lot, because people really like to read in our community, and it makes them, Tacoma Park is a really smart place because there's a library in the center of it. And especially because there are schools right around here, and the kids are also growing up really smart because there's a library right in the center of it. So I support the library renovation because there'll be more books and more things for people to read. So thank you.
Thank you, Chloe. Any other public comments on this item? Okay, seeing none, then we have a consent agenda that is packed. We have in our consent agenda a single reading ordinance awarding a contract for community play, dates for the City Council summer recess, appointments to the 2019-2020 Youth Council, appointments to the Board of Elections, appointments to the Commission on Landlord-Tenant Affairs, appointments to our Complete Safe Streets Committee, and appointments to the Recreation Committee. And I should have noted at the beginning of the meeting that we actually pulled the appointments for the Committee on the Environment because we were asked this afternoon by the chairs to wait. So that is not going in our consent agenda this evening. I'm looking at the city clerk just for confirmation. So any comments on those items? Okay, seeing none, we will move to our voting session then. Our first voting item is a single reading ordinance approving the FY 2020 budget amendment number 1. I don't believe there was any changes from the first reading. Would someone like to move this? Councilwoman DeBala moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Councilmember Smith, any discussion? All right, seeing none, will the clerk call the roll? Call the vote? Sorry, we're on the second reading ordinance approving FY 2020 Amendment 1.
Councilmember Kovar. Councilmember DeBala. Councilmember Costick. Councilmember Siemens. Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Searcy. Mayor Stewart.
Yes. Next, the second reading ordinance approving FY 2020 Storm Management Budget Number 1. There are no changes from the first reading. Would someone like to move it? Councilwoman Searcy, do I have a second? Councilwoman Costick, second. Any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk call the vote?
Councilmember Kovar. Councilmember DeBala. Councilmember Costick. Councilmember Siemens. Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Searcy. Mayor Stewart.
Yes. Next, the second reading ordinance adopting a pay structure for staff that are members of ASME. No changes since the first reading. Someone like to move it? Councilwoman Searcy, do I have a second? Councilmember Smith, any discussion? Will the clerk call the vote?
Councilmember Kovar. Councilmember DeBala. Councilmember Costick. Councilmember Siemens. Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Searcy. Mayor Stewart.
Yes. All right, that brings us to our single reading ordinance awarding a contract for architectural design services for the library. Before I ask that that be moved, I know there's a lot of information that was posted to the city website, so I'm going to turn it over to first the city manager to walk us through that.
Thank you. And in your blue folders, if you didn't already pull it out, is the revised package item for this ordinance. Last week, we did hear the presentation to council by Greg Lukemeyer with his engineer related to the floodplain study that was done, as well as the other work that is to be included in the contract for architectural and engineering services for the library. At the meeting, the council asked for clarification regarding next steps and decision points for council, time estimates for each steps, and a number of questions about cost. In terms of the steps, the first step would be approval of the contract with the architect so that site plan work for the completion of the floodplain study can be done, and design work that will provide key information for the council on the plans and on the cost estimates that can begin. In identifying the key decision points, Greg Lukemeyer recommends that the council review information at several times during the project. And the first would be after about 90 days of the work, when the site plan and floodplain information would come back with more information. And then about 120 days later would be the review of the design development work. This is a key point because this is the first time we get real cost estimates. What we have received so far are $300 per square foot, kind of generic construction cost estimates, not for this design, for what is being asked, or if there's anything that, there's nothing that we know at this point that saves money or adds money. And so one of the things that happened between the time of last council meeting's discussion and yesterday were a number of conversations about trying to respond to the council's concerns about what might happen with cost of materials, cost of labor. We hear of the variability in the construction market, and so one option was simply to add on extra money just as a cushion. What that does is it makes people think that it's a much more expensive project, and we don't know that. We're not talking about something where we're adding more features or those kinds of things from what had been discussed with the council before. It's simply we don't have cost information other than generic cost information at this point. So what Greg Lukemeyer mentioned was that after about 7 months of work, we would have very good information about what the design would look like interior, and the inside and outside. from which good cost estimates could be done by a cost estimator, and then that information would come back. That is an excellent place for a kind of a go, no-go discussion, a discussion about maybe there's a modification if the prices were higher than anticipated. To try to guess about it now isn't useful. And so after talking with him, to me, it made sense to have the contract that's being before you not be for the almost $800,000, but for $300,000, which gets us through that 7-month design development period and cost estimating. That would then come back for discussions with you to determine if any direction about the building or anything that you feel is important. And if everything seems to be a move forward, whether it's exactly the design or a modified design, then the remainder of the $800,000 contract amount could be authorized with the new ordinance to Mr. Lookmeyer to continue the work up through the construction documents. And so after hearing that, that's my recommendation for you, that we go forward with up to $300,000 for design development work, which also includes the significant steps on the floodplain study for completion, and then have this come back to you in about 7 months. I also included other information in the document, and several people have referenced it. We do have $7 million from the library bond. These are borrowed funds that can be used for the library or other facilities kind of within the community center. We have $300,000 from the two state bond bills that are very library specific. And we have the cable capital grant, the cable grant funds. We have about $3 million in that. We periodically use it for cable equipment. The $3 million has been sitting there for 10 years. We don't have many options about what it can be spent on. This is actually a place where it's usable. I'm not advocating using it all. I am letting you know, though, that it is a place where rooms that allow for audiovisual programs, programs to be filmed, work that relates to computer usage, a variety of things that are very media-oriented that go with libraries can be, these are funds that can be used for both building and for the equipment. And so I noted it. I am not advocating using all of the money, but it is available as we move forward, and we certainly, I think, should not just leave it there either, because we've not been spending it, and I don't think it's fair to taxpayers to have this money sitting there when it could be better used for these facilities. In some, we have about $10 million, a little over $10 million that could be used for the library if that were needed. One of the things that gets talked about is when we're talking about the price, there's building price, and then there's the other kinds of soft costs, contractor profit that go with that. There's perhaps $570,000 worth of furniture that comes along. And so there is a list of a variety of things that we can look through, and I think over the next few months while the design development's going on, we can tie down those numbers. The numbers that are less predictable, they're not huge, but less predictable, are the costs of moving books and operating in different ways while library construction is underway. There's a number of different options. Some of it relies on timing. We're going to have other things going on in this building. Maybe there's some ways to do some of the activities, and I hope they are in this building, in the rec center, and some other locations. But then there will be some things that do require storage. We're trying not to pay for storage. So we're pursuing a variety of options on that. And that, again, is something that would need to come back to you. We have spent some money already. This project started in some respects in 2014 when the I think somebody mentioned that they had been involved in some of the early surveys of this. A $5,000 report and stakeholder interviews and community interviews about different options to build a 21st century library. What does that look like? Not necessarily as a building, but as a service. And it was partly that I think helped convince the council to move forward to improve the library. We've had almost $10,000 in legal costs and reviewing contracts and doing those kinds of detailed work that we learned in past years. With past projects, you need the legal review, and so we do that. We've spent about $77,000 on the floodplain study, about $46,000 on the conceptual design work by the architects so far. So far, over about 5 years, we've spent $138,000 towards the library project. I'd also like to mention, and I notice our Economic Development Manager is here. One of the things that happened today was a tour by County Council members of the new Wheaton Library Rec Center combined. And they're saying, this is such a great thing to combine a library and a recreation center. What a wonderful facility. Like, we got it already over here. It needs to be nice, like some of the really nice libraries that are surrounding us. And one of the assets we have in selling our community from an economic development point of view are the assets that we have as public facilities, and a library is one of them. We're not going to have a hospital. It's making sure that we continue to have good public facilities that make people proud and want to be here and want to invest in our community from a business point of view is really important. And so she's been bending my ear about, have you seen this other library in, I don't even know, Hyattsville and whatever. There's some wonderful libraries around. And we do not look as nice as we have better programs than all of them. We knock them out of the park in terms of the stuff that goes on in that building. And so we want to keep what's wonderful, but we do need to fix the problems that are with the facility. And so I do urge moving on this one step of a contract for $300,000 for design development work that results in the completion but not approval of the floodplain study. The approval takes another year or something, but the completion of the work that needs to be done by the engineer and the design development work that results in a cost estimate that then we can all look at and have some real good decision and talking about. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Before I ask someone to move the ordinance, do we have any clarifying questions? Councilmember Smith?
I just have a comment.
Okay, do you want to wait till after we move it?
Yep.
Okay. Anyone have any clarifying questions?
I have a clarifying question.
Councilwoman Costa?
Yeah. The 300,000, does that get us to 7 months, or is that a portion of the 7 months?
That gets to 7 months.
7 months. Okay.
Yes, and he said that's a high number for 7 months, so it's up to 300,000 for the work that would take about 7 months.
Thank you.
Councilman DeBala?
Yeah, two clarifying questions. So specifically, the work would be reviewing the floodplain, taking the floodplain study to the next step, doing the schematic design work, doing the reviewing, doing the design development and getting cost estimates?
Yes.
So if we wanted to say those are the 4 things that would happen, is that pretty much it?
Yes.
Okay. And then the other question was, I understand you can't estimate costs. I want to clarify that there was this table from the architect. I guess was it only last week?
Yes.
And are there any major categories of cost missing from this table? The one that I noticed was the funds eventually for the the independent construction manager.
So
are
yes,
there any other?
Actually, there's 2 comments I'd like to make about the chart that was in the slide presented last week. So a construction manager, may cost about $200,000. There's ways to make it a little cheaper. It could be a little bit more. They're worth much more than that because they help identify when there's conflicts between an architectural design and a construction guy on the ground, helps resolve that. They review every invoice, they review every change order. And in the past, when we've had a construction manager work with us on some of our facilities, time and time again, we've been able to reduce the amount that we had to pay because we have those kinds of eyes on the ground every day that knows contracting. The other thing I wanted to mention had to do with the category that was listed as recreation, and on the chart that said 405,000. It was a shorthand for the work that would be required that's kind of outside of what we think of as the library and computer center. This is primarily work to renovate the bathrooms in this building and add more stalls. We do not have enough bathroom stalls in our complex to meet code. If we open the library, we'll be required to show that we meet code for the number of actual stalls. And so it would change the bathrooms that are in this building. It would remove the hallway that's right in front of recreation. It would reorient the office of recreation so that it's off of the main hallway coming in, which is a much better place if you're trying to reserve a classroom or something to not be on the little hallway, but to be on the main one. And that would also be the access for the bathrooms that go onto that small hallway. And so those funds are really related to the library project. They're not just to spiff up recreation staff. About 80,000 of that would be the interior finishes of the Office of Recreation once those walls changed.
Just while we're asking about the bathrooms, did we ever clarify whether or not we can have,
We will not require gendered bathrooms. Now, there's ways to do that. We may have to label them on plans funny, but we can make a variety of individual stalls so that it's something that feels comfortable to all, but is welcoming to all.
Thank you.
I have one more question on the sheet, on the blue sheet. You talk about in the environmental impacts of the action, you mentioned green building standards.
Absolutely.
And just everybody take a note. I'd like to see not just green building standards, but if we can cost effectively go further in some ways, for example, specifically HVAC.
I'm sorry.
HVAC specifically, and I can send you an email to send to the
Yeah, we want to do the strongest possible.
It's done tonight.
Yes,
Several residents have brought it up to me.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Councilmember Kovar.
Thank you, and thanks for the information. So I was unclear on one part of this, which is the 3 months versus the 7 months.
Yeah.
So this contract of up to 300,000, which may be less than that, covers 7 months or
That's right.
so. So what happens in the 120 days? Because I think I misread it, and what I sent out to people may have implied or said that the 300,000 would just cover the first 90 days. But what you're saying is it's 7 months, but with a break in the middle for us to get
Right, so
an interim report on it?
You get the interim report on the floodplain portion.
Okay.
During that time, the floodplain work would be completed by the engineer, and that takes about 30 days. That would come back for that information. At the same time, the architect and his team will be working on what's called detailed design development, and that takes a 7-month period. And at the end of that period, they'll come back again, and that has cost estimates as part of that. So there's an overlap in that first 90 days, but when it would come to you after those 90 days, it would be primarily related to the floodplain.
So at that point, what do you think we would know about the floodplain issues that we don't currently? What's your sense for that?
I don't think we would know a lot more. I mean, if there were some surprise, we would hear about it, but from what it looks like, we're 95% there already. It's a report back to you to say that it's completed and if there were any surprises or not.
But would that include, but that wouldn't include the county telling us?
No, but we would know more about what the county informally is talking to us. We don't get the final approval for another year after that.
Until we're actually going forward with construction, if
That's
we do
right.
that, right? So, now on the bathrooms, let me just ask you this. They were not in the original design or at the time?
No,
we
and this
did-
is part of why you do a concept study, is you look at what are all the issues, and as we were looking at it, and the architect was going through it, he realized we did not meet code for bathrooms.
Okay.
And I remember when we were doing this building, we somehow slipped through that one because the library didn't get changed. We used the same bathrooms, but they used to have 3 stalls in them, but to make it ADA acceptable, they took out one. So we made it less amenable to code, and so the architect, as he was going
Okay.
through, identified this is an area we have to meet.
And if you have ever used those bathrooms or tried to change
And we
for
have put
soccer
off-
practice in those bathrooms, it is challenging. It's doing yoga before soccer.
Which could be helpful for, in other ways. So just one other set of questions, then, or
Sure.
one other question, and I don't want to slow down the process tonight, Mayor Stewart, but I do just want to. So one of the things that's challenging in projects of this type, the bigger projects, is that we just can't know at certain stages earlier in the process everything we want to know.
That's right.
And it unfolds in an iterative way, and I think people understand that. But what would be helpful to make sure we understand, and I think Councilmember DeBala asked about this, is what things we think we will be able to know at certain points. So we're not going to know the final construction costs until we put it out to bid for construction, for example. And we're not going to know exactly what we need to do for permitting until we, submit the permits. But so in the 3 months we talked about, but at the 7 months, so what do we think we will have then that we don't have now? I'd like to kind of have an understanding.
Sure.
We're not going to know the true construction costs. We're going to have a projection of that, but we will have a better sense for X, Y, and Z. What do you think the X, Y, and Z are?
So right now we have a concept design that's very basic. We have a floodplain study where we've learned a whole lot of information and we have to finalize the submission. At the 7-month period, so much of the detailed design work will be accomplished that we'll know very well what the real building will look like, what it's likely to look like on the inside, what the rooms are going to look like, so that a cost estimator can identify how much cinder block, drywall, whatever the different equipment is that materials, to come up with some very close prices. What happens if it goes forward after those 7 months is primarily construction document prep. So you've made the decisions really about what the rooms look like and whatever. Then you have to go through the actual documenting in the huge books and plans for construction documents. So we get a long ways with that 7-month period.
But so we haven't finished every single design detail at that point. So I guess the question is, then at that point, if it looks like, wow, things have just gotten way more expensive than they did before, do we still have the ability to make some shifts in
Absolutely,
in
that's the time
project?
to do it. That's
Okay.
the best
And that's
time.
before you've completed all the detailed design. You've done some of it, but you haven't
You've
completed
done
all of it.
most of the detailed design, but it's not to the, it's not with the specificity that is tedious. And so it's the part that regular people can interact with and understand and deal with. And then when it gets, so then if you might want to say, let's scale back on this thing, or, and I hope you don't come up with a lot of new cool ideas to add to it, because there's that.
Yeah.
But, there'll be something that might say, we've looked at it and we can't do the solar panels, or I need to do something, and so that there's some modification. If that were the case, then the architect would make those modifications and get those revisions approved by you. What happens after there's basically, let's move forward, and it goes into the construction design, the construction documents, there still would come back to you several times, one at a
Yeah.
50% and one at 100%, both with refined cost estimates. So there's lots of check-in points even after that point.
But at the 7, and this is my last question, at the end of the 7 months, and I understand it's not precisely 7 months necessarily, but at the end of the 7 months, if we said we would like issue X to be changed in some way, the solar panels or whatever, and then we're potentially approving another $398,000 or whatever it is, the idea would be that whatever additional design work that the architect needs to do to address our wanting to make that change would come out of that contract?
Yeah, I mean, if something's really big, then he may.
If it's a major new
if it's a
wing,
major
that's
but they
a-
expect back and forth.
Right,
That's
okay.
part of what they bid for.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this. One of the things that I'm often interested in is just trying to understand the funds that we have available and what would potentially be a break-even point for us, understanding that the costs would likely fluctuate. So in terms of the library bond
Right.
that we're already paying on, right? So
Yes.
so one of one of the things I'm wrestling with in my brain is how will this ultimately impact taxpayers?
Right.
And in my mind, to some degree, based on what's here, is that many of that repayment has already started with the $7 million.
That's right.
And so that's already been accounted for in terms of our budget and
That's
current
right.
tax rate.
And that shows in your budget document for the future years for the payment.
Right. So it wouldn't necessarily be added cost per se because it's already, for the most
It's
part, the
already
7 million
added.
is already added.
Yes.
And then in terms of like the state bond and the cable grants, again, those are dollars that are already worked in, correct? So
That's right, and those don't have any repayment, those, and in fact, the cable grant, for the cable companies, they're not taxpayer monies in that way. The state bond bills come from state funds, so there's probably, for all of Maryland is putting in a little bit to them, but essentially they really don't come from Tacoma Park taxpayers specifically.
So in essence, the 10 million that we have available to us now, it's basically accounted for in the current tax rate
That's
that residents are paying.
That's
so
correct.
we're not necessarily talking about increasing taxes to accommodate this 10.1.
That's correct.
Now, if the costs come back and they're 12 million, then we're dealing with
Then we have a
either
whole different
negotiating
discussion.
and we're having a different discussion.
That's correct.
But as of right now, the 10.1 is accounted for either through non-tax dollars, free money, for
Right.
lack of better words, or the $7 million that we're already in
With the
repayment
interest
on.
that we're paying, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I have one more question. In the expenditures area, that does not include interest that would be paid on the bond, right? I mean, there's nothing listed there. Is it possible to quantify that?
Oh, yeah, it's in the budget document.
Okay.
Yeah,
So maybe that could be added
sure.
to future documents.
So on the fiscal impact, note that it was borrowed money, and so there's interest that
Mm-hmm.
we are paying on that. And I know Councilman Rakovar had brought that up, not necessarily that specific section, but yes, that we want to be very clear about that.
Is that it, Councilman Costick? Okay. I just want to piggyback on something, make a comment, I don't have a question, for Councilwoman, that Councilman Searcy said that, I think, we've been planning this, as a number of residents have said, for a while. And the fact that we weren't able to move on it this year, even though we had the money accounted for and we had started budgeting out, was because of the issues that came up with the floodplain study
That's right.
that we did not know we were going to encounter. So we had to take the pause and do that work. But I do want to stress how financially and fiscally we have been planning for this project very carefully, that we have been spending a lot of time in Annapolis advocating on behalf of the library to get state funds. And so we're, moving, I know it's it's a lot for us to undertake, but I do want to just underscore the points that Councilwoman Searcy just made in terms of the planning that has already gone into this.
That's right, and just to the note that the 300,000 or the 798,000 is in your budget for this year as part of that project, and comes from those sources.
Councilman Kovar?
Yeah, just one other point on that I think it's important. We've talked about this in the past, but maybe not lately because we haven't been at this stage. In our charter, we have various, and in our other documents that govern how we can borrow money, we have various guidelines in terms of the percentages of different kind of bond indebtedness that we can go into, sometimes measured as a percentage of the entire kind of wealth in the city, other times measured as a percentage of our budget, annual budget, gross budget, et cetera. And there are 4 or 5 different ways of measuring that. And they're not absolute straitjackets, they're guidelines for what we should do. But on all of those of the 4 or 5, and the city manager and I and others have discussed this in the past, we're well within
Yes, we're
our
well under
bond
the-
indebtedness guidelines, even with some of the other bonds that we already have out there for transportation and maybe even still the community center and a few other things. So although it's a big number, it's well within our financially responsible guidelines for us to do this. That doesn't mean everybody should support the project. I think it's a good project, but I just want to stress that that's also been taken into account. So,
Yes.
Great, thank you. All right, I think we're ready. Who would like to move the single reading ordinance awarding a contract for architectural design services for the library? Councilmember Kovar, do I have a second?
Second.
Councilmember Seaman, second. Now, before moving forward on the vote, I'll ask for comments. I have Councilmember Smith first.
I have hesitated on this project for many years. I supported it when it was $2.5 million. I think this is a lot of money for Tacoma Park for one project. It will limit us when we consider other things that possibly we can do as a city. But I will support this single reading ordinance so that we can get better information to see what the true costs of this project is going to be. But I am still not completely sold on it. For a community of our size, meaning budget, this is a lot of money. I mean, yes, you have other people building libraries in DC and in Montgomery County, but they have billion-dollar budgets. Ours is only $35–40 million, and we're already talking about $10 million. That's a lot of money. So I just want everyone to know that I would like us to go forward with it, but we should be very cautious in what we do with this project. Thank you.
Councilwoman DeBala.
Yeah, the need is so clear, and this has been going on for a while. I am, as everybody already knows, concerned about costs, and so I have 2 proposed amendments. One is to simply list in the 8th whereas the 4 items of what professional services are. 2 of them are there and the other 2 are not. So just so that everybody is clear, approximately 7 months of schematic design development work, first independent cost estimate, and additional floodplain analysis at a cost not to exceed, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just a clarification of what the architect will do for us for the next several months.
Did the city clerk get that?
Yeah, can you say that again?
Okay. Yeah, 8th whereas, approximately 7 months of, insert schematic design, then design development work, insert first independent cost estimate, and then the rest as is. Do you want to do that, or should?
Yeah, let's take each. Do I have a second for that amendment?
Second.
Councilmember Smith, second.
Can I just ask one
Yeah,
question?
mhm. Yeah,
So-
you moved it, so you actually do get to ask the question. Because you moved.
I'm honored. So I think it's great to add those additional clarifications. The only question I had was, if by mentioning those 4, are we closing off the ability for him to look at one additional thing that we might not be contemplating here? That's my only question. That would be true just with the 2 as it currently is, or all of them. And if the answer is that covers the
Design
landscape of what he
development
might
is
do.
pretty, schematic design and design development are pretty broad statements. I don't anticipate
Okay.
that being too exclusive.
They specifically refer to stages that he talked about last week, which I think.
Mhm. All
Okay.
right, any other
knows.
discussion on the
Okay.
amendment?
That's good.
I have a question.
Yep.
The wording was first independent cost estimate, is that right?
Yeah, that's what I
Is-
understood to
Is
be the
that accurate?
case.
Because we
It's
did
not-
get
it's-
some estimates
He's not,
previously.
it was, they have already had an independent cost estimator, but it was very generic. So I would prefer not to use
Okay.
the term first.
I'm good with that.
Okay. So do we all know what this is saying? Yeah, you have it, okay. Any other discussion, questions on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, then we include that amendment. Do you have another amendment?
Yeah, I have a package of 2 amendments to the 8th and 9th, whereas both of which relate to what I thought was pretty much a given, which is that we are committed to this project, and it's a question of what gets included and what doesn't, and how much it costs, and how we distribute the costs. So I was going to propose, and then when I read this, it suggested to me that there was still a live option that we might cancel, in the resolution itself, a live option that we would actively consider just not doing the project. So I was going to propose amending the last part of the 8th whereas to be including continuation as planned or modifications of the design and costs, and then take out the part about at any point decisions not to proceed with the project. So that's part A. And then to go with that, in the 9th whereas where it says if, I want to propose that we just say at that time, the time that we talk about in the 8th, whereas where we're doing that check-in, at that time, the council would consider an ordinance, and just cut that if the council decides to continue with the project.
So you're assuming that something's gonna happen?
Yeah, I'm assuming that
I'm sorry,
at
could you
least
just read the-
$7 million of something is gonna happen.
Could you just
So
read-
why would we say that in a resolution?
Can you just say, whereas at that time,
At that time, and then jump to, the council would consider an ordinance,
Oh,
et cetera,
sorry.
et cetera.
got it. Someone have a second to that amendment?
But
have a-
there are 2 parts to it
I have a
again?
question about what it was for the previous,
Yeah, go back to the
whereas.
previous one.
Can we repeat that part?
Okay.
The first amendment, you mean?
I got the part with the if the council decides to continue, but what was the amendment to the whereas clause
Oh, the
previous, prior to that?
the whereas clause above it, just cut after the last or, cut or as can happen at any point, a decision not to proceed with the project. Cut that.
Okay.
And insert an or before modification. So it reads, would be able to be obtained for council consideration of next steps on the library project, including continuation as planned or modification of the design.
And costs. Is what I
Oh,
said.
I'm sorry.
Added and costs.
I missed
And,
that.
and this may seem like a lot of wordsmithing, but I think the point is important, that we've heard from so many people.
Do I have a second for the amendment?
I'll second the amendment.
All right, Councilmember Kovar, second. Any other questions on it? All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, so now we have, the two amendments are in. I'm gonna Councilman DeBala, do you have anything else to add?
No.
Okay, Councilman Costick.
Thank you. I wanted to thank all the people who came out to speak in support of the library today, and as well as to caution us in terms of cost estimates going forward and the cost of the library project overall.
Yeah.
I have had opportunities, as all of us have, to take part in many of the great programs at the library, and have, as many of you mentioned, taken my young children there for events, taken them when they were babies, had a chance to meet other families through our interactions there. And I've always found it to be a very meaningful place, and as many of you said, a great place for building community and bringing people together, which I think is one of the most important things in our community and in our nation right now in many ways. So I am a huge supporter of moving forward with this project, and I'm very excited to see us making progress on this. We really haven't talked about this project much at all over the past couple of years. I've been on the council since 2017, and this is the first really substantial opportunity we've had to look at this, and I'm excited to see it getting back on track. So the one note I wanted to make was, in terms of a lot of the questions that I think have come up regarding questions about costs that have been spent, expenditures so far, as well as anticipated costs, I think the information, at least from the way my brain works, I think it's just in a lot of different places, and we've seen it in a lot of different formats. So just moving forward, it would be helpful to me when we get the cost estimates to just have all of that in one place, and just to be able to look at it really easily and quickly. And I also think...
I agree.
Great. And I also think it will be important for us to continue to communicate information about this project to the community, because it has really been about 2 years since a decision was made to move forward on this in a formal way. And there are new people in the community who weren't here 2 years ago who don't know about the project, and people who've forgotten about it or stopped following it or assumed nothing was happening because they didn't hear anything for 2 years. So I think the more we can get information out and emphasize the fact that our library does these great projects, and that the building is in poor shape and that we really need these renovations. And I really appreciate all of the work that the Friends of the Library and all of you do to help with those programs, to make those things possible, and also to do a lot of that communicating to the community about the importance of the library. But I also think just as a city, we need to do that as well, and need to focus that on, as this project moves forward, we need to do more of that. So thank you all.
Okay. Thank you. And actually, I just want to piggyback on what Councilman Costick said, and think that maybe this fall might be a good time for another newsletter article on the library, as we're undertaking these next steps to bring everybody up to speed on where we've been, where we're going on that. And I will just say that I want to thank the Friends of the Library, former members, people who have been working on this for many years, as well as the folks who have taken on new leadership roles and joined Friends of the Library now. It is really an exciting time to do this, and it's an exciting time for our library and our community. And having sat up here down there when Councilman Costick is sitting, and having actually sat through many of these votes when we actually didn't know whether or not this project was going to go through, I just want to say I'm really glad we're at this point, and very excited that we're moving forward, and we're looking forward to it. So with that, it is a single reading ordinance, so I'm going to ask the clerk to call the vote.
Councilmember Kovar.
Aye.
Councilmember DeBala.
Aye.
Councilmember Costick. Aye. Councilmember Siemens.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Searcy. Aye. Mayor Stewart.
Yes. All right. Thank you. You can all leave now. Next, we have a consent agenda. Would someone like to move the consent agenda? Councilmember Siemens, Councilman Costick second. There are a couple of single reading ordinances in here, so I'll ask the clerk to call the vote.
Councilmember Kovar.
Aye.
Councilmember DeBala.
Aye.
Councilmember Costick. Aye. Councilmember Siemens.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Searcy. Aye. Mayor Stewart?
Yes. All right, and then, let's see, Councilwoman Costick just had a quick thing she wanted to talk about regarding the Complete Safe Streets Committee. Now that we have it all up and running.
I know, I'm very, very excited about that. And I see that we have one of our new members out here, which is awesome. I'm so excited about this committee and the members that we have joining the committee. I think it's really going to be a fantastic group. I sent an email to the rest of the council earlier today, and I just wanted to follow up on that. I would like to propose that as one of the first things that we ask the committee to do, we ask them to take a look at the existing traffic calming and new sidewalk request policies and provide some recommendations to the council based on that. As you all know, this is one of the priorities we set, I believe both last year and this year for the council, has been to review those policies and seek to make them more equitable, more effective, and just to work better in general. And I really would see value in having the committee provide us with feedback and do some of that research so that we have their perspectives on things. So I'd like to propose that we contact them, and give them a chance to get started and organized, of course, elect their chairs and set a meeting date and all of those steps. But I'd like to propose that one of the first things we ask them to do is to work specifically on that project.
Councilwoman Duvall, did you have something, or is that an old
Oh,
one?
no, sorry.
Great. And if I could add just one thing, Councilwoman Costick, to that. In the request, thank you very much for sending that around for all of us to review and think. Can we make an explicit ask of the committee to look at these things through a racial equity lens and to be reporting back to us? And if they need assistance in applying that, the toolkit and other things that we can provide, we can help them with that. But that I'd like to actually call that out. It is a new committee. These, as we've spoken, and you know very well, having served on this committee prior to being on the council, many of these complaint-based systems and other things that are set up are exactly some of the things that we wanted to go after and look at when we put together the racial equity initiative. So, so with that, Councilmember Kovar, I see you're late.
Yeah, I agree with both of the comments. I just noted that Councilmember Costa said make that one of the things. Does that mean there are other first things we can ask them to do also?
So I have a lot of ideas. I'd be happy to.
Well, I didn't get a chance to respond to your email, and I apologize for
Yeah.
that, but I noticed one of the items in there was the zero, the Vision Zero kind of thing. And to me, this question, which is not unrelated to the sidewalks, but of unsafe intersections and streets, is very fundamental to what they do, too. So I'm fine with what you're talking about. I think maybe we should make a list of the things that we want them to do, and that could certainly be on. That I just wanted to make sure we weren't saying that that would be the only thing, and I didn't think so, but I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, I think in my email I also noted a couple of other things we've talked about, and that's one of them, looking at a complete streets or Vision Zero policy, possibly having a member serve on the parking management task force, which is something we discussed previously. And what was the other thing? Oh, possibly taking a look at the sustainability and climate plan for the city as well. But to my opinion, I also think we should give the committee some leeway to identify their own priorities and what they think. And one of the reasons we selected these people is because we think they have expertise in these things and we want to get their opinions. So I don't want to be too prescriptive and say do this and this and this. I also do think we should leave some leeway for other things.
Great. So seeing no objections from anyone on council, why don't we send that to the Complete Safe Streets Committee as a request, and then I doubt they'll probably be meeting in August, but then maybe we can touch base with the committee and set up a time to sit down with council in the fall to follow up. Awesome. Thank you very much. All right. Moving now to other public comments. Mr. Lovelace, you are all set to go.
My name is Pat Lovelace, your official peace delegate. And I'd like to ask the city to do three things. One, announce the time, date, and location for the National Night Out Festival, and also for the Tacoma Park Folk Festival. I think it's on the 8th. But I'd like to also ask to see if we can get a contingent in the Gay Pride Parade from Tacoma Park. I'd love to see that. And a couple of other people in D.C. said they'd like to see it. And also, I'd like to let people know that there's a couple of actions coming up in the city, in D.C. We're having the Hiroshima and Nagasaki commemorations on August 5th and August 9th. And we're going to have a candlelight vigil in front of the White House on August 9th in Lafayette Park. So I want to let people know about that. And also, I want to see what we can do to keep this meeting going. I want to thank Candace and Bruce Wolf for bringing me down to the meeting tonight. And it looked like we dodged the thunderstorm just by an eyelash. So I'm just hoping that we can continue coming down here like this. And also, I'd like to see what we can do to get transportation for me to come down to the meeting. Because that's what the problem is. I got no way of getting down there. And Candace can't do it all the time. She's working, and also she's had 2 hip replacements. And she's still doing it. But I'd like to see if we can get other people to help out. It'd be really great. And also, I want to let people know that the Washington Adventist Hospital is going to be moving in August. I think it's the 25th, I believe. And that happens to be the exact date 52 years ago when my pet cat died. Somebody strychnined it. And I've never, ever forgotten it. And it's pretty fitting that they close the hospital and take that away from us on that very day. And I'm wondering what's going to happen to us. The poor people and the elderly are going to have a hard time at it now, getting to their doctors and getting to their emergency room stuff and surgery. They're going to have a hard time. And also, I'd like to know if we can get a group of people up there on the 25th to have a vigil in front of the White House to remember a hospital that served us very well. And also to let people know that we still care. And we don't like the idea of the hospital closing, going out into more affluent lands. And I'd like to ask them to please see what we can do to get a presence up there, nonviolent peace presence. Thank you very much for letting me share. Love it, love it, love it.
Thank you, Mr. Lovelace. Ms. Moore asked for additional time. Okay. Nope.
So good evening. Earlier this month, my neighbor, who's an expert on Latin American gangs, noticed MS-13 and Barrio 18 graffiti on the underside of the Carroll Avenue Bridge that spans Sligo Creek. He and his wife were especially disturbed by the graffiti because the markings indicated that there would soon be a clash between Barrio 18 and MS-13. They immediately went to the Tacoma Park Police Department to report it. After waiting about 45 minutes with no response, they went home. Eventually, an officer was dispatched to their home, but when my neighbors explained what they'd seen, the officer seemed unperturbed and said that the location of the graffiti was not within the city's jurisdiction. This answer was not reassuring, so I contacted MNC PPC's Park Police Chief Daryl McSwain. He sent me a lengthy, detailed, point-by-point, professional email explaining that the area is under the jurisdiction of the Tacoma Park Police Department. He explained that both the Tacoma Park Police and the Maryland National Capital Park Police had been in contact with the State Highway Administration, which owns and maintains the bridge, to get the graffiti painted and covered. Chief McSwain also contacted the county police's gang unit. In my role as a teacher, I contacted Mike Harding, the head of security from Montgomery County Public Schools, to let him know about the graffiti because this occurred in the area served by the Montgomery-Blair High School cluster. My concern is that our police department's response was weak and even dismissive. It seems like the weak link is that not all of our officers were sufficiently briefed on this incident and that not all of our officers are clear on jurisdictional boundaries. I understand that there are some memoranda of understanding in the works to help solve the existing jurisdictional issues. It is imperative that these MOUs get signed, adopted, and that every member of our police department and our residents understand where the lines are drawn. The area under the bridge is a nexus of wards 2, 3, and 5. Get this figured out now, not later. Chief Duvall used to hold Chief McSwain's position as the head of the Maryland National Capital Park Police, so I am sure that Chief Duvall has a deep understanding of the jurisdictional issues. This is a no-brainer. It's time to act. It is well documented that MS-13 is active in our city. These are not juvenile miscreants. The gangs are dangerous. They are terrorizing and preying upon children and families. We need Tacoma Police to take citizen reports seriously and to respond promptly and respectfully. As a city, we need to do more to help steer kids away from gang life. A short blurb at the end of a recent Ward 2 newsletter seems to recognize this fact, but the specifics are missing in action. The adults involved in these international crime syndicates specialize in terrorizing the parents and children of families in our area who are from Central America, many who come here to flee just this kind of violence. The gangs use social media to stalk these families and to press the children into the service of the gangs. This is not the act of a few juvenile delinquents with a spray paint can. I urge Tacoma Park Police to be a friendly presence at local schools, to help children who've come here from places where police are not their friends, to see police differently and to trust them. Even if an officer could only be spared once a week for 30 minutes at each of the MCPS schools within our city, this would be a significant start. Maybe you could take some of the money out of the SWAT team budget. Chief Duvall mentioned some of the outreach done by his department. These outreach departments are a good start, but more is needed. The graffiti showed that the gang's footprint is expanding into other wards. Every officer should be aware of this problem and should welcome and not disregard citizen reports of gang-related activity of any kind. Clear, concise, and timely sharing of information among the members of our police force and our city government is essential. Outreach to keep us all informed and alert is critical. Just for background information, children and young adults who are not forced into gang activity can be drawn into gang involvement when there are feelings of hopelessness coupled with poverty, access to weaponry, and a lack of governmental transparency. We as a nation are complicit in the development and rise of MS-13. This gang formed in the U.S. prison systems out west, specifically the LA area. This may seem far removed from what we like to think of as our mostly bucolic little city, but you do not have to scratch the surface too deeply to find despair, fear, and poverty in Tacoma Park. What will we do as a city to deal with this situation to replace despair, fear, and poverty with hope and opportunity? Homework Club and the Young Explorers program is not enough if gang activity is spreading rather than shrinking in our city. We are a sanctuary city. True sanctuary is more than an open door. It is a proactive process that lets our Central American families know that they are welcome here and that they have legal avenues to seek the
Thank you, Ms.
protection
Moore.
they deserve.
Thank you.
Excuse me, would I be able to get a copy of that for Chief Duvall?
I would actually like to say that Chief Duvall did respond to this letter, and we can make it available to the full council. He responded in within 24 hours of receiving this and discussed what actions the police department did take and what actions we are taking regarding gang. And I will make sure that the entire council receives that information. Thank you, Ms. Moore.
Chief McSwain was better.
Thank you. Elliot?
Hi, Elliot Davey, Ward 1. So I was going to write something down tonight, but today kind of got away from me. Oh, sorry. So long story short, you all know I've been coming to City Council for the last 2.5 years or so, and this is, since the August recess is happening, this is going to be my last council meeting for the foreseeable future as a resident of Tacoma Park, as number one, I'm going off to college this fall, and number two, actually, my family is moving apartments to a place in Silver Spring. So I'll still be back to visit on breaks, but I won't be a resident of Tacoma Park. And
Elliot, definitely.
But I just wanted to say a quick thank you. As a member of the Youth Council and as someone who's been attending these meetings for the past few years, it has been abundantly clear to me how much this city and this government cares about bringing young people in and to be involved in the process. And I really appreciate all of your work on this and ask that you continue that work in the future, because I know that I wouldn't be the person I am today without having the opportunities that I have had growing up in this city to get involved, to vote at 16, to volunteer on campaigns, and to grow as a person and discover a passion and have a revitalized hope in government in a time that government at the federal level is terrifying, to say the least. But this city gives me hope, and it has been a great couple years. Thank you so much for having me. Oberlin? So a little ways off.
We have to talk.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Elliot. All right. All right, seeing no other public comments, any council comments? I really feel like we should end on that note, but okay. Councilmember Siemens?
Well, I hate to change the note, but we had a happy note this evening with the library and the progress that we're making on that. But I have a very sad note that one of the little patrons of the library passed away this week. We had a young, an 8-year-old young lady who was getting ready to go to enter 3rd grade. Suffered an illness along with the rest of her family, something that we would normally expect in family life. Unfortunately, she succumbed to that illness, and she was also a Ward 4 resident. The family, as you can imagine, has been traumatized by that, but they are desperately looking for money for the funeral and also to help her family through the next few days of grieving and not being able to go to work. And so I just wanted to let the community know that they do have a GoFundMe page, that they're trying to raise a little bit of money for those costs. Anyone who's interested can search for her name on the GoFundMe site. Her name is Shakira Kudi. That's S-H-A-K-I-R-A. Her last name is K-U-D-I. If you have trouble finding the page, you can contact me at 240-793-5108. And I would ask the city manager if we could consider whether it would be appropriate for the city to pass that information through social media. Thank you.
Councilwoman DeBala?
Regrouping here after that. Save the date for a coffee with the mayor and myself for Ward 2 residents Friday, September 13th at Los Pollos, which is on New Hampshire Avenue, just south of Ethan Allen, East-West Highway. I've sent some of you this already, but I'll just mention for everybody concerned that last Friday, the two COG committees had a regional meeting on tree canopy programs in a changing climate. It was a great program. I learned a lot. I've passed the information on to a bunch of folks, and if there's anybody else who wants to get a copy of any of the presentations or get a download on it, I found it to be very challenging as we are now entering this process of revising our tree ordinance to really see what some of the questions are about how things are going to change in the future and how we respond to it. In response to Jackie Moore's comments, I think it's safe to say that the mayor and Councilmember Kostick and I will be following up, and we'll continue to work with the police chief on that. And last but not least, go Ward 2. Safe Grow photos once again. That's all. Thank you.
Ward 3 is also awesome. Just two quick updates. One is I see Samara Cook-Gaines out here in the audience. We had an opportunity this morning to meet with representatives from WorkSource Montgomery, which is a workforce development group in the county. I think I've mentioned it before. I serve on the Human Development Federal Advocacy Committee for National League of Cities, and one of their initiatives is to look at the WIOA Act and consider recommendations on improving workforce development in the country. So that they had asked us to each contact our workforce development boards and find out some information. And so we had a meeting today. I was very grateful to you for joining me in the meeting. And I think it was a really great opportunity to make contact with WorkSource Montgomery again and some of the additional people there. And we talked about a lot of opportunities I hope will come to fruition in terms of possibly having some events, maybe in the library here, maybe in the community center, trying to do more to collaborate with them to provide workforce development opportunities and hiring events. So I'm very excited about that. And then second of all, I'm planning on having some office hours during the month of August. I haven't yet set formal dates yet, but I'll get some information out about that. So please meet with me, even though it's recess, we can still chat about issues. Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
I had a opportunity to attend a mural unveiling at 641 Houston Avenue. That's an MHP property. The program is called Flow, Future Leaders of the World. It was excellent, well attended, it was packed. Samira was there, thank you. Want to thank Grace Wiggins for helping organize it. I hope to see similar programs like this at other MHP buildings in Ward 5. These guys did a great job. Carpe Diem Arts, want to thank them for helping out or for helping put this together. I want to let residents know on August 9th, we will have another play day at Winslow Apartments from 4 to 7. And this Friday, we will have Parents' Night hosted by Lunch and Learn in this building here at 7 p.m. I want to thank Doris and Jackie for all of their hard work this year and everyone else that helped make Lunch and Learn possible. Thank you.
Great, just a couple of other things. Tacoma Park Folk Festival is having a fundraiser at El Golfo on August 24th, and I think at least one performer is going to be there, so go to El Golfo and support the Folk Festival. And I just want to say congratulations to actually a resident of Ward 5 in Tacoma Park, Frank Demaray, who has been appointed Deputy Director of Montgomery County's Housing and Community Affairs. So, yes, isn't that awesome?
That's good news.
That is very good news for all, for everyone. So we are very excited that Frank was appointed Deputy Director, and we look forward to continuing working with him in this new role. National Night Out is Tuesday night. Yes, Tuesday night, August 6th from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Yes, so this Tuesday night, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. I hope everyone can come out for that. And I'm going to turn it over to the city manager now for her comments.
Thanks. A couple items. One, an update on Flower Avenue, Green Street. It hasn't looked like a lot's going on. There is some underground work being done, primarily close to Washington Adventist University. The progress might be slow, but they're doing a lot of water main work. And it involves excavation, installation of a new pipe, temporarily patching the surface. Regarding the project work hours, we've extended the standard work hours. It starts at 9 in the morning. It was ending at 3. It's now ending at 5, so they can get a little bit more done with the water main installation. When there are early starts, extended days, or nighttime work, there will be a great deal of advance notification. So they're just letting residents know. I know messages went out to residents about the status of the Flower Avenue project and letting them know that there might be nighttime work at some points, but they will get noticed at least a week in advance.
I got a question. Is there a reason why some of the stormwater infiltration systems cannot be built now while the WSSC work is being done?
I don't know the answer. I'd have to get back to you.
Okay.
I think a lot of it's because they'll keep tearing it up back and forth with the water main for some time. So I think that's the issue, but I'll double check. The public piano opening concert on August 18th. So we're having this piano. It's going to be at the gazebo in Old Town. The Arts and Humanities Commission looked at a variety of artist proposals for how to paint it. And they're going to do that, and then they'll have an opening concert on Sunday, August 18th at 11 a.m. I just wanted to notice, we talked about the library a lot today, but when talking with our library director in a staff meeting, she was noting how they've cut back on some of their programs, some of their Spanish Circle Time and community programs because of the budget reductions. I'm not happy about that, and I'm just giving you the heads up that that's why not as many programs are going on right now. But I'd like to come back to you and see if there's some ways that we can move things around, because these are key people that I think deserve services in our community. And so this is a tough budget year, and we're trying to be very responsive to the budget decisions that were made. But as we get down into the nitty-gritty parts, I may come back to you at times and say some of the ways that this is cutting are hurting, and maybe there's another adjustment that can be made. So I just wanted to share this information with you and then probably come back to you in September.
Can I make a comment related to that?
Yeah.
I saw that in your update, and I think that's frustrating because when we talked about the library budget during the budget process, my understanding was always that the budget that had been proposed would allow for sort of an equal level of service that we had had previously. So this is really new news.
So part of this is how the Friends of the Library contribute and how they've changed some of their things. So part of it is not necessarily what was in the budget before for the library. And so I need to come back to you with the proposal.
Okay.
I do have a kudo for Sergeant Cindy Williams. She was very friendly to some folks at the IHOP restaurant. And I have hiring updates, and we may be making some progress. But please, folks, if you're looking for a job, look at our careers page, and we want to get you on board. Finally, in just a few hours, I'll be on vacation, and look forward to seeing you later in August. Thank you.
Great. All right. And just as a sneak preview, on September 11th, please mark your calendars for 6:30 here, because we will have our county council member, Tom Hucker, joining us prior to our city council meeting. So what did I say? Yeah. All right. September 11th. All right. I usually don't. So, all right. Well, with that, we are in recess. Thank you all. Have a nice evening.